Hi, welcome back to Enjoying Retirement. Today we're going to do a little bit of Intarsia cutting for a special pendant and earring set I'm making. And let's pick out some stones before we talk more about it. This is some Royston turquoise. I went out there for a turquoise hunt back in June and had a really good time. But picking out a couple pieces, one dark, one light, so that I can have a choice. But the star of the show is going to be Ivory. This is woolly mammoth ivory that I picked up at a very unique shop up in Anchorage, Alaska, while we were up there salmon fishing this summer. So, got a couple pieces. That first piece you saw was called bark. Here is some of the inner core with some lighter bark on the outside. The bark is the part that is exposed to the elements, so it's generally darker. Today's pendant is going to be a simple Royston turquoise and woolly mammoth ivory. So I'm actually making this for my dentist. She's been really good to me, and I've enjoyed going to her over the last many years. So my design, I want to keep a little bit organic, a little unusual shape, but rounded edges, so very simple. All right, we're going to begin. This is my 1960s, 70s Highland Park 850 cabbing machine. I rebuilt it last fall, put new wheels on it, added a third wheel on the right, and boy, it just still runs like a champ. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to clean up some of the turquoise edge so that I can really see what we are dealing with. I'm not trying to cut it down, I'm just trying to get a better feel for what the turquoise looks like underneath the skin. Royston turquoise, in my experience, comes in two types. One is in really hard rock, such as this is, and the other type is in a little bit softer rock. All right, that piece just broke. That's okay. Well, I don't need much. I just need the top of this pendant that I'm putting together. So here's the piece. Look at that. I mean, it's about an eighth of an inch, a little bit more vein. A lot of vein turquoise available out at Royston. So you really have to know how to cut it and then how to polish it. But once you do, it's a really, really great turquoise, and I just really enjoy it, and am thankful for having had the experience go out there. All right, so those are the two pieces we will choose. What we're going to pair with the ivory. Since I don't need all of it, I'm just going to cut it down to a size that I can use and save the other piece for something else. Again, I'm going to choose which one we're going to use a little bit later. Right now I'm just cutting them down to size. And again, that's another very old trim saw, but by golly, the thing still works, and I've been moving around with them for the past 35 years or so. Great machines. If you get a chance to pick up a old used one in good shape, hey, take it. All right, I'm going to put a backing on the turquoise. It's going to make it a little bit taller, which I need, but more importantly, it's going to strengthen the back. You saw the one piece crack as I was initially cutting it, but this is going to strengthen it, and it'll just make it fit better when I do the Intarsia portion as well. All right, so we mixed up some JB weld, put it on the back, and then we're going to let this sit overnight to cure. All right, hey, here's a quick trip out to Royston. You can see the mine there. You're not actually digging on the face of the mine, you're going through their tailings. I was out there for a day and a half, and I just had a wonderful time. A lot of wind that first day. You may be able to hear it in the background. But, you know, you put the effort in, you bring the right tools, bring the right set of eyeballs so that you know what you're looking for. You can walk out of there with some great turquoise. This was part of a large vein I found. I had to cut it up to get in smaller pieces to fit in the suitcase to head back home. Once I got home, I rented the tiles off from Home Depot to cut it up. May don't want to do that for slabbing, but for purposes of cutting it up to make cabochons, hey, it worked just fine. All right, so now let's start dealing with the ivory. I've never dealt with ivory before, so this was a new experience to me. I was told treat it like wood. Remember, it's not petrified, so it's not mineralized like a dinosaur bone. Yeah, all of this is at least 10,000 years old, going back to about 100,000 years that has come out of the permafrost. And if we didn't use it for things like this, you know, it would just disintegrate back into the soil. So I think this is a great way to honor and remember, boy, those massive beasts of the Ice Age. May not be for everybody, but I thoroughly enjoy studying ancient history and prehistory. All right, so those three pieces have been used for the earrings. As you know, if I cut them in cross-section, we'll see why in a little bit. This is going to be for the lower part of the pendant itself, so I'm cutting directly into the main part of the tusk. And I'm doing it lengthwise, so I'll get a different view of how the tusk is made in the pendant than I will in the earrings. And yes, it cuts very nicely on the bandsaw. So here we are back to my design. I've decided to go with a lighter color turquoise because I want it to complement the ivory. I don't want it to overpower, and I think that blue, the darker blue, is just so powerful it would overpower it. Okay, so our JB weld is cured, so now I just want to clean up the edges a little bit. I'm not really doing anything more here than getting off the excess JB weld and coming down to a clean edge so that we can see better what we have. Now I'm going to take the 80 diamond grit wheel and bring down the Mammoth Tusk a little bit. It's too thick for what we need. Yes, I could have used the bandsaw on it, but I found that it also works well cutting it on the lapidary equipment. And of course everybody uses here, I can't believe it's not butter tub to fill their fly trap. All right, this may take some explaining. I got interested in doing Intarsia work this summer. So I looked at commercial machines that I could buy, and I just decided, heck, I can design one and build it, so that's what I did. So welcome to the 2025 Engineering Retirement Model Number 1 Intarsia Machine. A couple of cake pans are used to keep things from splattering out. On the right side, I haven't used it yet, but I have a set of 4 discs there with diamond paste, so that'll become a polisher. On the left side is my wheel, flat lap, turn vertical. I used some old teak that I left over from building a spear gun so that I had a waterproof wood for the base. And the most important thing is you need it to be 90 degrees to the flat lap. So here I'm going to take the turquoise first, and I'm going to make sure that I have a nice flat base. And then I'm going to put it on the 90-degree angle iron that I have there, 90 degrees to the flat lap wheel, to make sure I get a perfect 90-degree angle. Because when you're doing Intarsia, you got to have that perfect angle. Otherwise, you're going to have gaps or things sliding out of place. So now I'm cutting the base so that I get a nice flat surface to form the base of the ivory. And I'm also cutting it down a little bit more to make sure that it matches the depth of the turquoise. I want to have everything approximately the same height so that when I clamp it later, I'm putting equal pressure on everything. So I'm cutting it a little bit more, making sure that I use the very flat base, and then putting it back in there and getting that perfect 90-degree angle. And that'll be the side that I use for the Intarsia. And to make sure I know which side that is, I'm going to mark that with a right angle so that I can follow it through the process. There's the mark I learned, I don't know where, high school drafting, math, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's important to remember which side has your 90-degree angle, which one's flat. All right, so I'm going to pull out some silver. Yeah, I know it's tarnished, but I've had that silver for 35 years, so I'm pretty happy. It may be tarnished, may need a little bit of cleaning before I can do anything with it, but hey, that's $4 an ounce silver. Yesterday, I believe silver hit $40 an ounce, so I'll deal with a little bit of cleaning. And it also makes it a little bit easier to make special projects and give things away, because I'm not invested in $40 an ounce silver. All right, so I cut that out, and of course, using the snips, I got to flatten it. So I'm going to use a silver strip between the ivory and the turquoise, mainly because I think it looks cool. I'd like having that demarcation line. So I'm making sure that everything's lined up. Now I'm going to go back, I'm going to clean the silver so that I can get a good epoxy hold on it. And even just sanding it, I need to flatten it again to be sure. Yeah, there's that dark line on the turquoise. That's where I use the marker to mark the silver. It's not actually a gap. Now you got to have a base, got to have a nice solid base to build your Intarsia on. I pulled this out from a slab I have, not even sure what it is. Looked like it had a crack in it, but I tested that puppy and it is plenty strong. And it's just the right size. So I'm going to go back out and make sure that it has a nice flat base so that I have a perfect mating surface for my turquoise and ivory. Here's the equipment we're going to use: some clamps, some acetone to get everything cleaned up. Most important is epoxy 330. That's a jeweler's epoxy that dries perfectly clear, and you can even buff it and to get it coming out fairly shiny. Hopefully it's not going to show on this project, but hey, that's the epoxy to use. So I got that mixed up, and I don't want to actually use it for about 8 minutes. I want it to get a little bit more tacky because it comes out pretty runny, and I want it tacky so it'll hold in place. So I'm going to use a Q-tip, clean off with acetone, and clean off all the surfaces that I'm going to be epoxying, to include the silver. All right, it's been about 8-9 minutes. The epoxy is a little thicker. Like I said, that's what I like. Things won't slide around quite so much. If you do it right away, it's almost watery. So make sure you get good epoxy on both surfaces that you're going to be mating to. So I'm going to go ahead and set down the ivory. Then I'll pick up the silver, being careful not to get my fingerprints and finger oils on the silver, so holding it by the edge. Maybe a little bit redundant, but I put epoxy on both sides of that too. Yeah, we're going to get some squeeze out that you'll see in a moment, but we'll deal with that. Got that tentatively set in place. Now I'm putting epoxy on the bottom of the JB weld bottom of the turquoise and on the side. Get that in place. All right, looking good. And there's the squeeze out I was mentioning. I don't mind that at all. That's actually a good sign. I'm going to use a paper towel at the moment, just get off the bulk of it, trying not to smear it around the stone or the ivory much. Kind of get it back into position. And when I'm ready, I'm going to take another Q-tip with some more acetone and just clean up the remaining epoxy. That's right there. That'll just make sure that I don't have to go to any extra trouble sanding and polishing later. All right, I like to squeeze top and bottom to make sure that there is a good seal between the turquoise, the silver, and the ivory. And there is. Got to watch out that things don't slide around when you put the clamp on, because they're prone to do that. So generally I take it back off, take another look, and wait till I'm happy. Clamp it up once again, squeeze it one more time, and then we're going to let that sit. And we're going to let it sit for about 24 hours to fully harden and cure. All right, while that is curing, we're going to go back out to the cross sections that I cut, and we are going to make some earrings. The video right now, this is only going to be about the Intarsia and the cutting of the ivory, to get a sense of that. Part 2, we're going to do the silversmithing. This is already a 24-minute video, and I didn't want to hold you guys on for much longer. All right, so I'm able to do about a 14 by 10 oval shape here. That fits just perfectly. So I'm going to put my dopping wax on the back, and that is going to hold it firmly while we head over to the grinder. Okay. You can always tell a guy who does lapidary because his fingernails usually have a groove cut into them where the stones have cut while he's trying to hold these things with his fingers, or hers. All right, 280 grit diamond wheel. I'm just trying to turn this into rough oval at the moment. I don't want to get too aggressive on it yet. We have plenty of other wheels that we're going to be using. So let's get this down to shape. Nails work really well as dopsticks for small items like this. All right, so let's talk about why I'm doing the Schrager lines. They're a crisscross pattern found in the dentine of proboscidean ivory, which basically means elephant and mammoth. It is really cool. And it is a primary way of identifying the difference between elephant and mammoth ivory. Elephant ivory is illegal to possess and obtain in most of the world today, but mammoth ivory is generally legal. You can tell mammoth ivory, see the lines right there? If those intersect at less than a 90-degree angle, then that is ancient mammoth ivory. It is not elephant ivory. So now I'm trying to get these down to the same height. They were oversized. I cut them a little bit large because I wasn't sure how they would cut. I wanted to make sure I had plenty of room. Now I'm switching over to the 280 diamond rosin wheel. Boy, what a change it makes. I mean, this thing barely cuts, especially compared to the other wheel. Maybe there's something wrong with it. Mine barely cuts at all, which is okay for this type thing. Then I'm going to go through a progression 600 and finally end up on the 1200 grit wheel. Plus the other thing is I think those Schrager lines form a really cool pattern. And they haven't been replicated yet, so if you don't see those Schrager lines when you're buying supposed mammoth ivory, then it's a fake. All right, I'm let them dry off quite a bit. You're not supposed to get mammoth ivory wet, but so far I haven't seen it hurt, but I make sure it's dried off before I take anything over to the buffing wheel. I'm using ZAM. It works. I'm not real happy with it. I'm looking for something better, and if you have a better idea, hey, please leave me a note in the comments as to what you suggest I use. But nonetheless, for now, I think those are a couple beautiful pair of cabochons that'll go into simple post earrings. All right, so it's the afternoon of the next day. Let's take a look at our Intarsia glue up. And it looks like it did a really good job. See that note there? Yeah, it's the first time I've ever spent this much time trying to film in point of view. Boy, is it tough. So, if you follow somebody who gives you point of view filming, and you think they do a good job, hey, give them that thumbs up, because my experience on this, it's very hard. Sometimes this can be difficult just doing it by itself, but when you're trying to do it through the viewfinder of your camera or phone or whatever you use, it is just that much more challenging. All right, the base stone is tough, so I'm back to the trim saw. I'm going to trim off so much so that I don't have to, do it all on the grinding wheel. But now we're back to the grinding wheel. One thing I do want to caution you here is just be careful about grinding the silver strip on your really rough hard wheels. What you don't want to do is get that silver strip vibrating, because that may break your epoxy bond. So just be careful with that. Once you switch to a rubber expanding wheel, it's less of an issue. But when you're taking off the heavy stuff, just be very, very careful. All right, so I've roughed the outline. Just going to clean it up a little bit. And again, we're going to go through a progression of wheels here to make sure that we get it down to the right size with progressively finer grit. Once I have the rough outline, I'm going to switch over to my 8x3" expandable wheels over there. And yeah, these are a little bit old-fashioned. I love them though, because you can put sanding belts on there anywhere from here. I'm using a 120 up to 1200, or you might even be able to get something up to 3000. So you got to just keep changing them, but it gives you great versatility. So we're going to clean it up a little bit more on the 120. And like I said, there seems to be less of an issue with the silver vibrating when you're using it on a rubber expanding wheel. I'm going to start turning over the edges a little bit, which, as you know, is the beginning process of creating a cabochon. All right, I'm pretty happy with the way that's looking right now. We still have a lot more work to go to turn that into a cabochon, but we do have the shape. But I'm not happy about how thick the backing stone is. So it's really done its job. It's there to make sure that I had a mounting surface so that I can put everything together and to give me extra space to glue up and for the epoxy to hold instead of just along the edges. But we've done the hard physical work on it, so I feel pretty comfortable cutting that down to a fine line. And I can still see that crack in there, but somewhere in the eons of history, that crack self-healed because it is strong as a rock. But I cut that on the wheel, so I got to take the base back over to my Intarsia machine, the vertical flat lap, get the water going, and make sure that I have a perfectly flat base so that when I set it in silver, it won't be rocking. So I'm really happy with things so far. All right, back over to the cab machine, and I'm running through my various sizes of grit and doing basic cabbing at this point. I want to make sure that the top is the same height all the way across. I don't want to have any gaps in height. So I'm going to flatten that out, and then I'm going to roll it over like a traditional cab. And yeah, Mammoth Ivory works pretty well. It is nearly the same hardness as Turquoise, so they work well together at this stage. All right, I'm on the 1200 grit. I'm just doing some finishing touches. The end of the Turquoise was a little bit high, so I got it pretty well into the cab I want. Still going to be fairly flat. It's not going to be high dome, which I'm fine with. Now I'm taking it back over to the ZAM buffing wheel, and you got to be careful here because on the buffing wheel, ZAM will take down the ivory faster than it will the Turquoise and, of course, the silver. So I try to do them in separate steps so that I'm not undercutting the ivory. And there you have it. I am really happy with how that looks, and I'm just thrilled with how the earrings came out. I love those Schrager lines. Well, part 2, we're going to get into the silversmithing, so stay tuned for that. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this. If you've never worked with ivory before, I'm very impressed with it, and I really enjoy the natural look it gives, especially when paired with Turquoise. So stay tuned for part 2. Same time, same bat channel. Hey, as always, I am enjoying retirement. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.